Hello everyone and welcome to this short introduction to the Data Plus flow. You probably have already seen the user demonstration, and now I want to show you how this workflow has been developed. Essential for this workflow are two tables that are modified one after another. To connect to different tables in one and the same workflow is also a unique characteristic among the Data Plus suite that no other extension is capable of. So, if you are in need of an extension that can connect to more than one Data Plus database table, the Data Plus flow is the way to go. Like in many cases, it's advantageous to create the desired database tables beforehand to facilitate the development later on. So, our first step is to go to the Data Plus management site and navigate to the Tables section of the site. Here we click on the plus icon on the top right corner to open the table creation dialog. Our first table will be called visual_error_article and has to contain the columns comment and article_ID. We confirm with OK and start to create the second table. This one is called visual_error_grid and must have 4 columns, namely article_ID, error %_x, and %_y. Another important step that needs to be done before we can start working is to enable the API functionality for the two tables. To do this, we navigate to the API section on the left side of the page. Then we click on the plus sign and assign a name. By clicking on the symbol in the database column, we open a details window. Here we can specify the tables that are enabled with this API key and how restrictive the access should be. We need only read and update, so we tick the corresponding checkboxes. Afterwards, we again confirm with OK and most importantly save the settings. Then we switch to our Qlik worksheet. Here we trigger the Edit mode and start dragging the extension on our worksheet. Then we can navigate to the Settings section and open the editor. Here we get the infinite grid display where we are going to work in. The trigger is a default building block and marks the start of our workflow. Before the actual visual error tracking can take place, we need to provide the user a possibility to type in the article ID for which the error tracking is being made. The perfect building block to deal with this task is the user input. So we navigate over user to user input. With drag and drop, we place the user input directly underneath the trigger and connect the two blocks by drawing a line between the two. To underline the demand for an input, we want to display an image alongside with the input element, so we just paste the URL from our content library into the corresponding text box. The input is mandatory for our workflow, so we navigate downwards to Validation, change the validation type to Required, and choose a matching error notification if the validation criteria is not met. The next building block will be the visual error tracking, so we click on the white space in the grid to return to the user's menu. Then we select the visual input. Again, we drag and drop it and connect it to the existing chain. The display text should be errors, and the image of the car part which errors are being tracked will be placed in the text box below. The goal is to classify the errors in 3 different error types: paint defects, deformation, and gap dimension defects. Therefore, we will create 3 markers. We open the first marker and define an icon, a text, and a color. This process is for all 3 markers pretty similar, so we can fast forward to the next building block. The last step in the workflow is to type in a comment for the specific article ID, so we start to navigate again over the Users section to the building block User Input. In the block's main menu, we only modify the display text and navigate to the button subsection. Since this will be the last visual that the user is able to see and the rest of the workflow is for the user invisible, we want to change the appearance of the button to a safe button. Therefore, we change the text to Save, change the color schema to Success, and choose the floppy disk as a pictogram. Now that the user inputs have been designed, they need to be written into their database tables. So we click on the white space of the grid to return to the menu, and here we click Back to return to the main menu. This time we navigate via Internet to the building block dbWrite. Here we need to specify the table and copy the API key from the management site. Then we specify for the columns comment and article ID which column should get which value. The second insert operation is a little bit more difficult because more than one error could be tracked per article ID. For this reason, we need to insert each error in a loop. The right building block can be found via Control and then Iterate. This iteration element, if being run in the array mode, will go through every element of an array and apply the same method to each and every one of them. In our case, the database insert operation. So the next logic step is to drag and drop the DB write block on our workflow grid and integrate it at the loop side of the iteration. This time, we specify that we want to write to the table visual error grid, copy the API key, and proceed with the columns. The article ID will be filled with the step data of the first block, but the other 3 columns will be filled with the information of the particular iteration. Under value, we choose by key. Then we type in the values percx, percy, and value. To reload the recently inserted data, we want to finish our workflow with an app reload. We are able to find this build block in the subsection Qlik. And after connecting it with the rest of the chain, we completed our design of the data plus flow. Thank you for watching. If you don't want to miss any updates regarding the Data Plus suite, please subscribe to our channel.